This book is about the relationships between important people in the world, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. To understand what is happening now in the world, it is important to understand how these leaders interact with each other. Recently, a significant event happened. The United States, under President Donald Trump, stopped giving military aid to Ukraine. This means Ukraine stopped receiving weapons and help from the U.S. military. This decision was a big change, and many people around the world had strong reactions. In the United States, people had different opinions about this. Some agreed with President Trump's decision, while others disagreed. In Europe, many countries were worried and said this was not a good decision. They thought it could make things more difficult for Ukraine. However, Russia reacted positively to this news. Russia seemed to welcome the stop of U.S. military aid to Ukraine. To understand why this happened, we need to look at the history between these leaders and countries. The relationship between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, is not simple. Also, Donald Trump has a long history with Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. Understanding this history is important to understand why the U.S. stopped military aid to Ukraine. This book will explore the history of these relationships. We will look at how Donald Trump's views on Ukraine developed over time. We will also examine important events, like a phone call between Trump and Zelensky that caused a lot of discussion. Furthermore, we will explore the long relationship between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin and how it has changed. To help us understand these complex relationships, we will include information from experts. These experts have studied these leaders and the countries they lead. They can give us important information and help us understand what is really happening. By looking at the history and listening to experts, we can get a better understanding of the relationships between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin and why these relationships are important for the world today. 2. Trump and Ukraine before Zelensky. Before Volodymyr Zelensky became president of Ukraine, Donald Trump already had some ideas about the country. These ideas were mostly based on what Trump thought happened in the 2016 U.S. elections. Trump believed that Ukraine tried to help Hillary Clinton and hurt his campaign. He thought Ukraine was trying to make it look like Russia interfered in the election, when he believed it was actually Ukraine. This idea stayed with Trump when he became president. He felt that people wrongly accused him of working with Russia to win the election. He thought that if Ukraine was involved, it would show that he was right and the accusations against him were unfair. To be honest, Trump probably did not know much about Ukraine before this. His main focus was on Russia. He had business interests in Russia, like building projects and partnerships. He traveled to Russia and had connections there. He did not have similar business deals or connections in Ukraine. For Trump, Russia was more important and familiar than Ukraine. So, when thinking about Ukraine, Trump's starting point was often Russia. He did not have a deep understanding of the history or the relationship between Ukraine and Russia. His view of Ukraine was shaped by his belief about the 2016 election and his focus on Russia rather than a real knowledge of Ukraine itself. 3. The 2019 phone call. In July 2019, a phone call took place between the presidents of the United States and Ukraine, Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky. This call became very important later. Before the call, President Trump was looking at foreign aid programs. He said that Ukraine had corruption problems. He also thought that European countries should give more money to Ukraine. Because of this, he stopped almost $400 million of military aid to Ukraine. A week after this, Trump called Zelensky. The call was officially to say, Congratulations to Zelensky for winning the election a few months before. But the conversation also included other topics. Trump talked about Joe Biden, who was vice president at the time, and was planning to run against Trump in the next election. Biden's son, Hunter, was also mentioned. According to a record of the call that was made public later, Trump asked Zelensky for a favor. He asked Zelensky to investigate the Bidens. Trump also wanted Ukraine to look into a server. Trump believed this server could show that Ukraine, not Russia, interfered in the U.S. elections in 2016. He wanted Zelensky to find information that would help him prove this. Trump's request was seen as controversial because it looked like he was using his power to ask a foreign leader to help him with his own political problems in the U.S. It also seemed like he was using the military aid as a way to pressure Zelensky. He suggested that if Zelensky did not do what he asked, Ukraine might not get the military aid. At that time, this aid was becoming more important for Ukraine, including weapons that could be used to fight. Zelensky had only been president for a short time and did not have much experience in international politics. He tried to be friendly with Trump during the call. He praised Trump and said he was impressed by his leadership. Zelensky also hinted that he would ask his new prosecutor general to look into the matters Trump mentioned. He did not clearly say yes or no to Trump's requests, but he suggested he would see what could be done. This phone call became a big issue very quickly. Someone reported concerns about the call, and this led to an official complaint. Soon, information about the call was in the news. For Zelensky, it was a shock that a private call became public. He understood that Ukraine was now involved in U.S. politics, which could be dangerous for his country. When Trump and Zelensky met in person later, Zelensky looked uncomfortable. Many people in Ukraine were surprised and not happy with how the U.S. was treating their country. 4. Impeachment and fallout. In August, after the phone call, someone made a complaint about what Trump said to Zelensky. This person was called a whistleblower. Because of this complaint, people in the U.S. started to talk about impeachment. Impeachment is like starting a trial to remove a president from their job. The Democrats in the government said Trump did something wrong. They said he asked Ukraine to help him win the next election by finding bad information about Joe Biden. They thought this was abuse of power. Trump said he did nothing wrong. For Zelensky, this was a difficult time. He was shocked that the phone call became public. Usually, calls between leaders are kept private. He understood that Ukraine was now in the middle of U.S. politics. This was not good for Ukraine. Zelensky and Trump met in person in the U.S. It was not a comfortable meeting. Zelensky looked uneasy and did not seem to know what to say. People in Ukraine were surprised by how the U.S. was treating their country. They felt that the U.S. was putting a lot of pressure on Ukraine and not showing respect. They were also surprised by the strong words Trump used. The impeachment process went on. The House of Representatives, which is like one part of the U.S. government, voted to impeach Trump. They said he abused his power and stopped the government from doing its job properly. But the Senate, another part of the government, voted not to remove him from office. So, the impeachment failed, and Trump stayed president. This whole situation had a bad effect on the relationship between Trump and Zelensky. At first, they seemed to think they were similar. Both were new to politics and knew how to be on television. Maybe Trump thought Zelensky was like him. But things changed when Trump used Ukraine for his own political reasons. This created mistrust between them. Zelensky felt that Trump used Ukraine to get what he wanted. Trump was irritated because the impeachment happened because of Ukraine. He felt that Ukraine caused him problems, even though he thought he won the election fairly. It was a stressful time for both leaders. and made their relationship much worse. 5. Years of little contact. After the difficult time of the impeachment, the relationship between Mr. Trump and Mr. Zelensky became much quieter. The negative feelings and mistrust remained. For a few years when Mr. Trump was not president, there was very little direct talk between them. It was a period of distance. Ukraine knew U.S. support was important. To keep this support, Ukraine worked in Washington. They used lobbying companies to help them talk to people in the U.S. government and explain their situation. Ukraine wanted to make sure the U.S. continued to help them. During this time, Mr. Trump seemed to talk more with Mr. Putin, the leader of Russia. There were more phone calls between Mr. Trump and Russia than with Ukraine. Communication with Ukraine was not very active. For Ukraine, these were years with less contact with Mr. Trump. It was a calmer time, but also uncertain because they did not know Mr. Trump's future plans. This period of little contact meant the connection between Mr. Trump and Mr. Zelensky became weaker. When Mr. Trump started to plan to become president again, things changed. Ukraine became worried about what would happen next. 6. Trump's return and Ukraine's worry. In 2024, Donald Trump won the election again. This made people in Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, feel worried. They had seen what happened during Trump's first time as president. But there was also a little bit of hope. Some people in Ukraine were not happy with how President Biden was dealing with the war. They thought he did not have a strong plan. They heard Republicans in the U.S. criticizing Biden's approach. Maybe, some Ukrainians thought, Trump could be different. They had a secret hope that Trump could make peace. They thought maybe he would be strong with Russia. They knew Trump was unpredictable. This might make Putin, the Russian leader, think carefully and decide to stop the war. So, there was a mix of hope and worry in Ukraine. But there was also anxiety. Ukrainians remembered how Trump had reacted to Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, before. They knew Trump still thought Ukraine had tried to interfere in the U.S. election in the past. He believed Ukraine did not support him enough and preferred the Democrats. Trump seemed to want Zelensky to apologize for this. Zelensky understood that he had to change his approach with Trump. He knew Trump was very focused on deals and what America could get in return. So, Zelensky started talking more about American interests in Ukraine. He moved away from talking about democracy and freedom for everyone. Instead, he talked about what was good for America. He tried to be more transactional, like Trump. However, there was a big difference in how Trump and Zelensky saw the world. Trump seemed to believe that big, powerful countries could do what they wanted. Smaller countries like Ukraine just had to accept it. Zelensky, on the other hand, wanted Ukraine to be seen as a partner to the United States, working together. This difference was a big problem. It was not just about personal feelings between Trump and Zelensky. It was a fundamental disagreement about how the world works. It would be very difficult for Ukraine to convince Trump to be a strong ally in their fight against Russia. Trump did not see Ukraine as a necessary partner and did not feel he had to help them. 7. Trump and Putin. A long story. Donald Trump's connection with Russia is a long one. It started in 1987 when he first visited the Soviet Union, which is now Russia. Some say this trip was set up by the mayor of Moscow. Trump looked at places for hotels, but nothing happened then. Later, some people claimed that this trip was more than just business. They said that the KGB, the Soviet Union's secret service, might have been watching Trump. One former KGB agent said that Trump was likely surrounded by KGB agents during his visit, without him knowing. This agent suggested that the KGB might have given Trump ideas and flattered him. After this trip, Trump took out adverts in newspapers in America. In these adverts, he seemed unsure about the U.S. being part of NATO. Some people thought these ideas were similar to what the Soviet Union wanted. The former KGB agent even claimed that the KGB saw this as a success, thinking they had influenced Trump. It is important to note that these claims are not confirmed. However, it is known that the KGB often try to influence people from other countries. It's possible that someone could be influenced without even realizing it. After the Soviet Union fell apart in 1991, Trump did not do much business in Russia for a while. But in the 2000s, he started working with business people from Russia and other countries that were once part of the Soviet Union. Around 2008, a Russian newspaper reported that Trump was thinking about working on old hotels in Moscow. His son also mentioned that they had many customers and money coming from Russia in their New York property business. Some say that Trump had money problems at this time and found partners in Russia to help him. Vladimir Putin became the president of Russia in 1999. In 2013, Trump went to Russia again for the Miss Universe pageant in Moscow. Two rich Russian property developers helped bring the pageant to Moscow. Trump seemed to enjoy his time there and said he hoped Putin would come to the show. Putin did not come, but Trump spoke about him in an interview. In this interview, Trump said he had a relationship with Putin and thought Putin had done a very good job for Russia. He said Putin had shown strong leadership. This was before things became very tense between Russia and the U.S. At that time, there were disagreements about Syria and also about a law in Russia that was seen as discrimination against gay people. Despite these issues, Trump showed admiration for Putin. In 2016, Donald Trump was elected president of the United States. Soon after, there were claims that Russia had interfered in the U.S. election to help Trump win. A report was made by a former British spy about possible connections between Trump and Russia. This report made serious claims, but they were never proven. An investigation was carried out to look into Russian interference. The investigation found that Russia did try to disrupt the election in 2016 to help Trump. However, it did not find evidence that Trump and his team worked with Russia to do this. One important event was the leaking of emails from the Democratic Party before the election, which hurt Hillary Clinton's campaign. U.S. intelligence said Russia was behind this, but they did not say Trump was involved. In 2018, Trump and Putin met in Helsinki. At a press conference, Trump was asked if he believed U.S. intelligence that Russia interfered in the election. Trump said Putin denied it strongly and that he did not see why it would be Russia. This caused a lot of shock, as it seemed like Trump was trusting Putin more than his own intelligence agencies. Later, Trump said he misspoke and that he did have faith in U.S. intelligence, even though there was no proof of secret cooperation. Some people noticed that Trump's views and policies often seemed to match Russia's interests. This raised questions about the relationship between Trump and Putin and why Trump rarely criticized the Russian leader. 8. Election meddling in Helsinki. In 2016, there were claims that Russia tried to interfere in the U.S. election. People said Russia wanted to help Donald Trump win. After the election, there was a big investigation called the Mueller report. This report looked into if Russia interfered and if Trump's team worked with Russia. The report said that Russia did try to disrupt the election. They wanted to damage Hillary Clinton and help Trump. One way they did this was by stealing emails from the Democratic Party and making them public before the election. U.S. intelligence agencies said Russia was behind this. However, the Mueller report did not find enough evidence to say that Trump's campaign worked together with Russia to do this. Despite these findings, questions about Trump's relationship with Russia and its leader, Vladimir Putin, continued. Trump often spoke positively about Putin and seemed to admire him. Some people noticed that Trump's views on some issues were similar to Russia's views. In 2018, Trump and Putin met in Helsinki, Finland. This meeting became very controversial. During a press conference, reporters asked Trump about Russia's election interference. U.S. intelligence agencies had already said Russia was responsible, but when asked if he believed them, Trump seemed to take Putin's side. Trump said Putin strongly denied that Russia interfered. Then Trump said, "I don't see any reason why it would be Russia." This statement caused a lot of shock and anger in the U.S. Many people felt that Trump was trusting Putin more than his own country's intelligence experts. Even Trump's own advisors looked surprised and upset. Later, Trump tried to correct his words, saying he did believe U.S. intelligence. But the Helsinki summit raised serious questions. People wondered why Trump seemed to side with Putin and what this meant for U.S. policy towards Russia and other countries. The nature of the relationship between Trump and Putin and its impact on the U.S. remained a topic of much discussion.
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.